Hi, Dan. It's so nice to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Hey, Elisha, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Beautiful. And you see, I want to thank you for two things. I love to thank my guests for these two main things. Firstly, thank you for investing in yourself, Dennis. You see, some months back, okay, I was passing by a mango tree, and this particular mango tree didn't even catch my attention at all. Why? Because the mango tree's got no fruit, and you see, it didn't catch my attention. But you see, just recently I was passing by that same road, and before I even got close to where the mango tree was, it caught my attention real good. Then I moved closer, and I was wowed. Why? Because now it's got a lot of mangoes on it. The point is, the fact that Dan is dedicated his time, energy, and resources to becoming who he is, to becoming who you are today, that attracted me to you. And I've got to say, thank you so very much for, improving yourself. I love it. And the second reason, thank you for honoring the invite. I truly appreciate it. I am quite excited to have Dennis on
Well,
the
I
show.
appreciate you having me.
Yeah, beautiful. Because number one, my interest in knowledge seeking. I believe in order to transition from a chaotic situation to that of a beautiful one, Dennis, I believe it takes the application of knowledge, quality information. And you see, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness means ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking. And that's going to make our conversation very, very important to me and even to the listeners. Now, the second reason I'm excited to have Dennis on the show is for the sake of the listeners. Dennis, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got a lot of information flying out there. How to do this, how to do that, how to do. So these folks trust me for quality stuff. And that's why when I was reading through your profile, I was excited because I believe our conversation is going to be insightful. So for that reason, Dennis, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or professional journey. We're just so curious. We want to know how you got here. Then afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Dennis, over to you.
Well, when I was a young man, when I went to school, I was not happy with school. I had dyslexia. I had a hard time reading. I didn't like class. I was an unhappy student. The only thing I cared about was American football. I wanted to play football all the time. And when I was in class, all I thought about was football. So the first day that I was eligible, I went and joined the football team. And then something unique happened. My father showed up at school, and I thought, I've never seen my father at school before. He came out on the field and he took my helmet, he gave it to the coach, and he grabbed me by the arm and he said, "My son's not playing football." Well, I only weighed 70 pounds. I mean, I was very tiny, and he was afraid I would get hurt. So I joined the band and played the drums. I still hated school, but I loved the band. So one day, a college band came and did a concert. And I thought, oh, this is great. I don't have to go to class. So I went to the concert. And after the concert, the band director said, well, we brought our marching drum section to put on a little show. And they put on a show, and my mind just exploded. I thought, oh, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. So I went to my band director and I said, how do I become part of this drum section? And he said, well, Dennis, you're failing high school. They're not going to let you in college. You're going to have to start studying. And you're going to have to make really good grades for the rest of the time you're in school to be able to get into college. So 3 years later, after changing all my habits, reading every day, taking my books home, studying as hard as I could, I was accepted into Jacksonville State University and became a member of the Jacksonville State University drum section and eventually became a section leader. So after college, I became a band director. And my goal was to become a college band director because college kids paid more attention, worked harder. They had more of an incentive to do well. So when I put out feelers, and I was hired by Georgia Tech and Georgia Tech University in Atlanta, Georgia, to become the band director there, which was my ultimate goal. So I moved to Atlanta, and I got a phone call from a company in Memphis, Tennessee, and they said, "We want to hire you." And I said, "Well, no, I've got the dream job. I'm not coming. I'm not for hire." And they said, "Well, let us fly you to Memphis. We'll give you a steak dinner. We'll buy you everything, give you a cigar, and put you up for the night, pay for your airline ticket." Well, back then, in the early 70s, getting to fly somewhere was a big deal, especially for free. So I said, "Yeah, I'll do that. I'll go, but you're not going to hire me." Well, to make a long story short, they offered me 20 times what Georgia Tech was willing to pay me. 20 times. So I took it. I hadn't signed the contract with Georgia Tech, so I took the job, and it was a sales position, but it was a good one. They really did pay me a lot of money. And they gave me 3 books: Think and Grow Rich, Success the Glenn Bland Method, and The Greatest Salesman in the World. And I read those books, and I mean, they changed my life. Reading books can change your life. So I went out and started selling, and I really did well. I made so much money. I bought a house, I got married, I got a new car. I had all of the toys that anybody would ever need. So I continued to read. I thought, this got me excited. I need more books. So I read Psycho-Cybernetics. I mean, the list of books is too long for me to mention here, although they're mentioned in the back of my book, which I want to give all your listeners a copy of my book, an ebook. All they have to do is go to realimpactbook.com and scroll down to the bottom where it says podcast attendees, and click on that, and we'll send you the book. And there's no obligation. It's absolutely free. We know if you read the book and like it, you'll want to give it to people for a gift, probably. So did you have a question, Elisha?
Yeah. You see, that was a very interesting journey. And that part where you mentioned that reading books can change your life, I tell you, it's nothing but the truth. That's so correct. And I love how you dedicated your time to obedience. When they told you that you've got to study and all of those things, and you committed yourself to reading books and, studying hard. That's very inspiring. And I love that. Okay, you mentioned real impact, all right? So let us begin the first question from there. What inspired you?
Okay.
Yeah, what inspired you to create real impact daily inspiration?
Well, I became a real estate investor because I wanted to work for myself. Working for someone else just didn't fit for me. I was an entrepreneur, and so I started investing in real estate back in the 70s, which, 50 years ago. And I was good at it, and I moved to Texas, and there was not a real estate investor group in my town. I had to travel a long way to go to a group, and I wanted to hear the speeches. I wanted to mingle with the other investors. So I started a group in Arlington, Texas. It became the largest real estate investor group in the world. We had 10,000 members, but that's on the side. So one of my members came up to me and said, "Dennis, I'm going to retire. I want you to teach me how to do what you do. I want you to teach me." And I said, "Well, I don't have time to teach you. I'm busy investing." And he gave me a blank check. He handed me a check and he said, "You fill it out. How much ever it is, I'll pay it." So I put a number on there. It was more than I knew he would pay. And he didn't even look. He just signed it. So that's when I started teaching. I started teaching real estate investing. And so I got really good at it, and my students were super successful. So people started, just like you, they asked me to be on their podcast. So one of the questions was, "Dennis, what makes your students so successful? What is the one thing that you can tell my audience that will help them become more successful investors?" And I thought for a second. I said, "Well, I have my students change their habits. If they form success habits, they'll become successful. So then he said, well, what's the number one success habit? And I said, form the habit of reading something that will move you toward your goal every single day. If you do that for years, you'll become an expert in your industry. It doesn't matter it can be real estate, it could be law, it could be medicine, it could be anything, whatever your goal is. If you spend some time every single day reading something positive that motivates you, that's the answer. And he said, that's good. So after the podcast, I thought, that was really the right answer. And since then, I've read other people answer the same thing, that education is really the key. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if there were a tool of some kind to help people form the habit of reading every day? And then I realized, well, for 45 years, I've been collecting poems, quotes, and short stories. I could put those in a book, and they're all different sizes, so that if somebody wanted to read for 30 minutes, they could read a short story. If they were exhausted and they just got home, and, I forgot to read today, they're going to bed, flip to the back of the book and read a quote. It takes 5 seconds. And you keep your habit going. Or if you're at the airport, let's say you got 3 hours. In the back of the book, here's the book. In the back of the book, there's a list of over 100 books in priority order. So you keep one of those books with this one. So if you have long periods of time to read, you read from the other book. Now, this book was written as a tool, not as a book to read. It's a tool to help you form the habit of reading. Although it's great reading, but it was not meant to be picked up and read from cover to cover. You just read a little bit at a time. You read until you get something from it, and then you contemplate what you've read. And it's an interesting book. The stories are very powerful. I mean, they'll bring tears to your eyes because they're stories of people who had struggled, really struggled, and lost and failed and got knocked down, and they just had a will so strong that they continued to get up and go. And there are people that you'll recognize their names and you'll think, I would have never thought these people had to struggle so much in order to become so successful. So that's how the book came out.
Amazing, Dennis. You see, when I listen to people talk, I always try to get out the motive behind why they're doing what they're doing. And I got to discover yours by all you've been saying so far. And I must say, it is a great blessing to get to listen to someone like you speak. You are so thoughtful.
Well,
yeah, and you've got this good heart to, you created the book as a tool in such a way that people will find it convenient to make use of it at any time of their life. You mentioned about the court, you mentioned about the list of books and all of those things, the poems too. Amazing. And I love that, and that really touched me. Okay, let us talk about the law of nature. All right. What is the law of nature, and how does it help with personal growth?
Well, there's a lot of laws of nature. There's not just one. There's a particular one that has to do with what this is. But when I first got into business, I had a mentor. His name was Jack McConico, and he brought me in, and he was the vice president of a large company, and I was a kid. I mean, he just took me under his wing. There were hundreds of people in that company, and he brought me in and said, "You're special, and I want to help you become more successful." And he told me about the laws of nature. He said, there's laws that govern everything that everyone does. And if you work with these laws, then your life's going to be happy and pleasant. You're going to be successful. Everything's going to work out. But if you work against the laws, you don't have a chance. And I said, stop. I want the book. give me the book. Well, I want to read it. He laughed and he said, no, the laws of nature, they're not in one book. They're in a lot of books. You have to read a lot in order to discover how the laws work and how you can make them work in your life. So one of the laws of nature that has to do with this book is if you continually educate yourself about any one thing, you're going to become an expert in that thing. You're going to know a lot about it. You'll be able not only to help yourself, you'll be able to help your friends, your community, your students, and everyone else. So one of the things that I want to do with this book, so if you go to realimpactbook.com, you'll see a little tab there that says help the children, or it will say charity. There's two different ones. It says charity or help the children. It's a GoFundMe page. And what I want to do is raise money to provide these books to libraries and school systems that are disadvantaged and can't afford to have a book like this in there. And I want to give them to places where elderly people go. I want to give them to libraries and communities, not just school libraries, but libraries and communities that are disadvantaged, so that children will have the opportunity to form this habit and change their life. It's continuing education for young people. It's child literacy. It's important. This is an important law of nature, and I want to get the word out to as many people as I can. So if you're watching this and you have a niece or a nephew or a young person that you know that's graduating from high school or college, this book would change their life. You give them this book and they'll keep it. If they use it, they'll keep it forever. They'll never forget you. People don't throw books away, especially this nice one. I mean, this is the hardcover book. It's quality. I mean, I had an artist do the drawings for the book. I had it printed by the second largest printing company in North America. It's the same printing company that did Harry Potter. This is a quality book. And then you can get the paperback book from Amazon, for it's inexpensive. And I'm giving you the ebook. There's also an audio book. But I want to get the word out because I believe and sincerely believe that this book can change a lot of people's lives for the better.
I believe so too. I haven't read it, but I believe that strictly. Okay, so we have just more question to go, all right? So, quickly,
Okay.
what are 3 practical tips from your book that readers can start using right away?
Well, the book is not that kind of book. The motivational stories, let me just take one of them. Sylvester Stallone, everybody knows Sylvester Stallone, the Rocky movies, you're familiar with that. You wouldn't think that he struggled in his career because he's so famous. Everybody knows who he is. He's in a lot of wonderful movies. He's had several series that have worked out really well. Well, the story of Sylvester Stallone starts when he was living in a bus station. He was so broke he couldn't feed his dog. He had to sell his dog because he couldn't afford to feed it. Now, he was extremely poor. So he went to a boxing match and he saw Ali fight an unknown fighter. And the unknown fighter stayed in the ring with Ali for 12 rounds. And he was so impressed that he sat down and he wrote a script out for a movie. And he was trying to be a movie star, but he was failing. And he went to an audition and he didn't make the audition. He didn't think the part was right for him, but he mentioned to the producers, hey, I wrote a script for a movie. They said, well, bring it by and we'll look at it. They didn't think he would, but he did bring it by the next day, and they liked it. Well, they said, we'll give you $375,000 for it. Now, this guy was broke. He didn't have any money. He was living in a bus station, showering in the YMCA. and he couldn't feed his dog. And he says, well, yeah, I'll do that if you'll let me be the star in the movie. And they refused. They said, no, we won't do that. So he had to make a choice. Am I going to sell them my movie for $375,000 and I'm broke? Or am I going to hold out and become the star of the movie? And he says, well, I'm used to being broke. So, he risked it all. That's one thing. He was willing to risk everything and continue to be poor. And they brought him in. They paid him $35,000, which is 1/10 of what they promised him. They paid him $35,000. They gave him $1 million to do the movie, made him produce it himself. And he used handheld cameras. He used family. And he put the movie together. And when it came out, it was shown in several places with varying interest. But when it was showed to Hollywood, I'm not going to tell you the rest of the story. I want you to read it in the book. It's very interesting, though, how everything just flipped around and he went from being super poor to being able to go back and buy his dog back. He paid $15,000.
He bought his dog back.
For $15,000. He sold it for $25,000 and he bought it back for $15,000, and it was in the movie. The movie was Rocky. The movie was the first Rocky movie. He made it himself. He came in under budget. $1 million was not much of a budget for a movie, but he did it all himself, and it was a super hit. And then, what's happened since then. He's had a number of successful movies. But here's the tip. I live in Arlington, Texas, which is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of the United States. So the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport is DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth, and I live in Arlington, that's A. So the underlying theme of the book is this: D, desire. You have to have a burning desire if you want to succeed at anything. Faith. You have to believe that what you're doing is going to work to the bottom of your heart. Even when you fail, you still have to believe it's going to work. Is will. The will means when you get knocked down and you think you're failing and there's no hope, you still get up and proceed. That's the will. And the A is action. And that's the last tip. Without action, none of those other things matter. So if you can remember, make a note of this: DFWA, desire, faith, will, and action. Those are the tips for the book. And the book is kind of similar to Think and Grow Rich. It's kind of similar to The Greatest Salesman in the World. But the underlying theme in Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which is the first book on the list, by the way, in the back, is desire. The people that he told the stories about all had a burning desire. And it's the same way with these stories. The people in this book, Hershey, Disney, Andrew's sisters, they all had a burning desire to become successful. And they all failed and failed and failed. And it looked like there's no way these people are going to be successful. There's just no way. They just failed so many times, and they just got up like successful people do. And they dust off their britches. That's what we say in the South. Dusted off their britches, and they got up and went and continued, and they became successful. And now we know the name Hershey chocolate, and we know Abraham Lincoln, and we know Walt Disney. And if you don't know the Andrews sisters, you should, because they were the number one singing group of the 20th, for 3/4 of the 20th century. They were the number one singing group. The only way they got knocked off is the Beatles. It took the Beatles to take them out of first place. And that's a great story. I love the story of the Andrews sisters. And there's other stories, Martha Berry, people that you may not know, but people you'll get to know and you'll love them.
Sure. Amazing. You see, it has been a very, very inspiring and educating moment with you on the show, Dennis. Thank you so very much. Okay, so to bring this to an end, Dennis, what would you like to leave the audience with? Like a final thought. And maybe there are some ones listening who would like to reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing and all of that, how can that be possible?
Well, if you want to reach out to me, you can go to Real Impact Books, but realimpactbook.com, and there's a contact us section. You can scroll to the bottom and you can get your free ebook, and you can watch the videos, which tells what the book is. Then there's also the GoFundMe section. If you want to donate, anything would be fine, $1, $5, $100, 10,000, 100,000, to help get the word out to children so that we can help them change their lives. And I thank you so much, Elisha, for having me today. I really appreciate it. And I hope your audience gets a lot out of this.
Thank you too, Daddy. So that's going to be the end of the show. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing this amazing insight with us. It means a whole lot. You see, I've got to read your book. By all means, I've got to. Thank you so much, Dennis.
If you do, please leave a review on Amazon. Thank you very much.